When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Coran.
That's it, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things Podcast, and this is going to be a really important interview episode. Today, we had the pleasure of sitting down with Per Borgen to get his insights and opinions on landing a developer job despite current market challenges. We also got his opinions on how AI is shaping both developer productivity and developer education. As the CEO of Scrimba, an online coding school with over 1 million users, Per has unique insights into not only web development, but also the challenges that aspiring and junior developers face as they learn and enter the job market. If you're looking at getting a job in web development, this episode is absolutely packed with tips and tricks to help you succeed as you learn and start to earn. And of course, there's a little bit of uncertainty with AI right now, whether it's controversial, whether you should use it, don't use it. There's going to be a ton of insights into that as well. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Let's cut to the interview right now. Alrighty, everybody, we have Per on the line here. Before we jump into this loaded episode, Per, what's up? What's going on? And what have you been working on?
I'm very well, thank you. What am I working on? Well, today I have been prepping our upcoming launches at Scrimba. We have a huge launch coming up in, the next month. There's a lot of course production and stuff going into that and marketing and whatnot.
How do you manage that? Like when there's a big, thing coming, I always feel like, the best way, at least in my opinion, is to sort of break it up into smaller tasks. I always kind of struggle with should I be focusing on, the trees or the forest, let's say? Should I be focusing on the whole task? Or should I be focusing on not micromanaging, but getting those little things done?
Right. No, I'm kind of naturally a guy that focuses on the leaves, not the trees or whatever you said there. I like to get into the nitty-gritty details, sometimes at the expense of the broader strategic plan around the course. So I often think it's in the nitty-gritty details and that magic actually happens and that actually make it go viral or do really well in a channel or something like that. So it is, I definitely see that challenge. I feel it myself. But now we've actually taken very deliberately, we've set a date for it. We've given ourselves enough time and we've decided we're just not going to rush this one out as we've done so many times before. We're going to set up a big linear project where we define all the tasks, delegate them, and do it the proper way, essentially.
That is a big challenge for me too. I'm definitely a detail person where I'm no, I want this, particular social post or whatever it is, this particular episode or whatever to be so perfect. But then you realize oh shoot, I've been, dealing with this episode for 4 weeks and I haven't been, getting new interviews or haven't been getting
right.
Getting the sort of broad strategy or pushing the broad strategy of the show forward. I'm absolutely one of those people. And I know that Mike will be Matt, what are you doing? Why are you so focused on this social post or something? And I'm I don't want to leave it, I don't want to leave those details undone.
Right. Yeah, I get our CTO is kind of insane in that regard. He is such a perfectionist and but in a good way. He can really create magic. So for some people, I think it is very much the right thing to do. But once you have a lot of people you manage and it's a big operation, of course I can't do that now. I have to force myself essentially to take the higher perspective.
That is definitely the challenge. We've worked with contractors because Mike and I run our own agency and we've worked with contractors in the past, over a long term, over a couple of years and things like that. And it's totally a thing where I'm, so focused on what I'm doing. I'm just working on someone's slider or something on their website. And then I'm just like, oh shoot, like I have to keep checking these DMs in case that person's blocked or in case this person needs something or whatever. And it is like totally a challenge. But like you said, like some people are going to be better suited for the very detailed things. And then there's going to be other people, of course, that are more suited for like seeing the forest, seeing the whole picture and kind of pushing the company forward.
Yep.
Now I want to kind of like jump into kind of the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're going to be talking about, getting hired as a developer. We're going to be talking about AI, kind of like the forefront, if you will, of what's going on right now, the job market right now, things like that, all kinds of things. So I want to jump in here first with AI because, AI obviously is rapidly evolving on the consumer front, but it's kind of becoming a keystone in many developers' toolkits. And even though it's so new and it's still being pioneered, people are still using it. Like they're using it all the time. They're using it professionally. They're using it personally, things like that. And so what are your general thoughts on AI, in the context specifically of coding and developers? Like is AI good or bad? Because it is controversial for some.
Yeah, that is a big question, like whether it's good or bad. And I guess the only reply, my opinion there is it is both, essentially. It's both good and bad. And yeah, we can take the good sides first. So obviously, this enables a lot more people to write code. Suddenly, it's accessible. It's democratized for a broader population. And that is a good thing because if there are people who want to build software, if they have ideas for app they want to put into life, if businesses have problems they want to solve, but they don't have access to developers, of course, that software should be built. So that is good. And it's also great in the sense that you as a developer can use it to learn a lot faster. If you use it mindfully, you suddenly have a private tutor sitting side by side with you. You can ask questions and discuss solutions and stuff like that. So each and all one of us can be a lot more productive, which is good. But there are, I would say, some downsides, which we are seeing we're seeing more and more of these days. So obviously one is like, it will lead to a shit ton of crappy built software, of horrible code bases, which are just prompted into existence. Now, that is like when you use some of these newer agents, of course, that'll happen. But I'm not really sure that's in and of itself a bad thing. If the creator doesn't really care about the code quality or understanding the code, maybe that's fine. But we do also see that some developers who rely too much on AI these days, I think they are weakening their coding skills. And we see it online more and more, like anecdotally here and there. And I see it in our community as well. Like developers who just suddenly, without AI aren't capable of building what they thought they would be capable of building. Like suddenly they're stuck in a to-do list and they're working developers, right? They have a job, but obviously they've kind of fallen short and forgotten some of their craft. And this is also, I think, more a problem for juniors because there was an MIT study last year which showed that juniors rely on AI much more so than seniors, and they get a larger productivity boost, something like 20 to 40%, whereas juniors only get a bit over 10, around 10%. So if you're a junior relying too much on AI, you might end up actually becoming more stupid or you become more productive, but also a bit more stupid or less smart, I guess I could say, because all developers are quite smart. So yeah, that is a downside and a challenge, I think, for people in the industry today. And I guess unlike as a newbie developer trying to break into the industry, this also kind of clouds or kind of it makes it harder to find the talented coders or the skilled craftsmen amongst the job application pool. It's easier for people to cheat their way ahead. So if you've spent a lot of time really perfecting your skill and you are a good, competent developer, other people might kind of get ahead of you through using AI. So yeah, that's a long reply. A lot of positives and negatives, and in general, I would say it is progress. And of course, we want more progress. We are all happy that we're not still writing punch cards, right? or that we have high-level programming languages. We have frameworks, we have open source, and we have Stack Overflow. All of these are just like progress that has been made over the last like 50 years or so. And we must continue to have progress if we are to kind of take the world to a better place, I think. So, yeah.
Well, it's a long answer, like you said, but it is a very loaded question because there's a lot of things to consider. Like, there's going to be people out there that are like less developer, and what I mean by that is like someone who's not becoming a developer for getting a job or something like that. They're more entrepreneur than developer, and they want an app made. They don't have the money to hire a team of developers, or maybe they only have the ability to hire one rather than a team, and so they're going to go in and their goal at the end of the day is to get their web app or their app done. They don't care about the code quality either because they literally don't care or aren't aware that there is such a thing as code quality. They just want their, to-do app or whatever it is that they're building. They just want that thing done. And so it comes into question. And that's not new with AI either, because we've seen people who are more entrepreneurial than developer. They've gone to Stack Overflow for years, and they've just come in and, I'll take that conditional statement, I'll take this code snippet, that code snippet, and then they just stitch everything together. And it's really the same thing that AI is doing. I would argue that AI is definitely, in my experience, and I'm sure there's examples where it isn't, but in my experience, AI is cleaner than just grabbing a bunch of code snippets, because when you're talking in various forum posts on Stack Overflow, you're talking in very specific contexts where the AI can actually take the information that it understands and then kind of massage it into the specific kind of problem or thing that you're doing currently.
Yeah, I think so as well. It gets more personalized. And yeah, I agree that these entrepreneurs, tons of talented entrepreneurs and driven entrepreneurs out there who don't have the technical skills to build, and yet they see problems in the world that should be solved. Surely they should have a chance at solving that.
And like, this is just like another tool that they can use. Like, I know that, we as developers, like, or just tech people as well. Like, I always tell my friends, like, I can become a tech snob where I'm like, I'm not using that type of computer just because, like, I'm not going to buy that type of computer. There's no reason. It's a better deal. Maybe it's more powerful computationally speaking, but I don't like that brand, kind of become that tech snob. And you can see that with like some developers, because they'll be like, you know what, I don't want to use WordPress. I don't want to use these other tools. I don't want to use AI maybe even. However, the entrepreneurs are the people that are constantly reaching for the tools, because their goal isn't the development. Their goal is the solution to the issue. And like we mentioned earlier in the episode, it's like some people are going to be detail oriented. Some people are going to be kind of that zoom out oriented. They're going to be there for the whole company. This is kind of the same thing where someone's there to solve the problem and someone else is there to solve the issue, but like they're there really for the technical of the issue.
Exactly. And so I will say though that those people or the people who build software just through prompting, I have yet to see any like good software be built in that way. And
right.
really good apps that take off, or like I think there will still be a huge separator between those who really understand what they are doing and those who don't. Like, if you give a random person an AI tool and tell them to build something, they're not going to come up with something great. Or, I mean, maybe if they have that entrepreneur who knows that specific problem will solve that specific problem, but won't have thought about the underlying architecture and scalability, and probably not be great at UX and UI. I mean, so I'm just trying to say here that I think there is still a lot of, we shouldn't be snobs, but also acknowledge that there's a lot of bad software that will be built over the next few years.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Because like, I mean, we've already, like, even when we were in college, when Mike and I were in college, we were already seeing some bad software being made. And we started at like assembly, and then we worked our way up kind of thing, because we did a lot of hardware courses. And it's like, even just working your way up, like you would have people declaring global variables for everything. And, just kind of like the telltale, like, what are you doing? You could do this in one if statement. You got about 40 here. What are you doing here kind of thing? And what's a little concerning, and this actually leads into my second question, is, we mentioned sort of the junior developer and them kind of coming in to like learn, like coming into the field and using AI to learn, of course. But what do you think about that early learning? So like, do you think that developers should learn to use AI tools early in their career? Or do you think that they should really only learn AI or start using AI once they've learned how to code without AI intervention in order to sort of build those key skills of like problem solving with like, like computationally speaking, right? Like breaking a problem down into loops and other things like that.
So I think that this is kind of the advice I always give for these kinds of similar type of questions, which is based upon my belief that, or what I've seen from Scrimba, for running Scrimba for years, is that boredom is poison for code learners. It's the most dangerous thing, or the most dangerous feeling you can feel, and you must avoid it at all costs. So that means that if you are the kind of person, if you are that little bit of an entrepreneur, you want to see, you get pumped by seeing your project deployed and in the getting maybe a few users and stuff like that. And you want to do that early as you are learning the basics of coding. Then by all means, use AI to speed up that process, because it'll just continue to feed your internal motivation. And as you build better and better, or like more and more complex apps, you will learn more and more. You just prompt yourself into a corner and you don't know how to fix the underlying issue with your app because you just don't understand the code base. So you will do that, and that is frustrating, but you'll have a lot of fun and probably end up at somewhere great. So if that's you, by all means, jump on it. Though if you're more of the kind of person that likes to work on hard, specific problems, solving riddles, doing algorithms, going deeper, a level deeper, like in terms of programming languages, and like just really that kind of curious person, then I wouldn't use AI. I would rather just lead into that and do tons of algorithm challenges and go deep and bottoms up instead. And you can use AI, of course, but I mean, there's no point in trying to solve algorithm challenges and then getting the AI to solve it for you. That would serve no purpose. You won't learn, and you're not building anything which you're launching either. So to sum it up, pick your path based upon your interests is what I think is most important. And eventually, I think these two paths I now talked about will converge, because sooner or later, the entrepreneurial hacker who just gets things out there will need to go deeper into the material and understand how the code works. And also sooner or later, the kind of the detective, the puzzle, who likes puzzles and solving algorithms, will have to start building stuff and launching stuff and seeing more of like the bigger picture and then that kind of the surrounding product. And both will have to use AI, I think, eventually, or will use AI eventually. So, but they get at it at different angles. So that's my advice. And with all that said, we do see a lot of people who struggle with overly relying on AI as well. So it is something to have in the back of your head.
Well, there is something there as well. Like we've mentioned it on the show, Mike and I, a few times now, and that is that the AI is not a replacement for a human mentor, but it's a mentor almost that's always there. Where, if you are a person who is coding late at night or early in the morning, something like that, and your mentor is unavailable at those sort of off hours, or you don't want to wait like a day for another email back or something like that, this is an instant like, hey, how do I fix this if statement? What's going on here? How do I do this? How do I do that? What's your, like, I'm just kind of throwing this question in here now, but it's like sort of like, what's your take on that? Because, when we talk about this, it's sort of interesting because it's like well, actually, I'll just give an example to clarify. So the other day I was working on making like a filter work on a website, and I was using a plugin on a site builder for a client, and I had to extend it with a bit of JavaScript, just extend the capability. And I wanted to code it in a certain way because like I know how to code, I'm doing it. And the AI was just like adamant that I wanted to do it this other way. And it was like an older way. It wasn't as efficient, way more lines, things like that. And so I'm in there like correcting it. Like I'm like, no, like stop what you're doing. I want to use this method. I want to change this and that. And when you mentioned that prompt hell, it immediately rang in my head because it's like I was like forcing this thing out of prompt hell. And like a junior wouldn't get that. And if they were using the AI as a mentor, they might get into either prompt hell or get that old hat advice like I was getting. And then like, I'm always like on the fence of like, how much better is that than waiting a day for your mentor to get back to you? Like your actual like in-person mentor. So like, I don't know if you have any advice on that. I know it's a bit of like a bit of an abstract kind of like question there, but it's sort of like, is there any sort of telltale sign when if a junior dev is using an AI like a mentor, like they're just, kind of going through courses or going through their own portfolio project or something like that, and they get stuck, is there a thing where it's like, okay, this is a question for the human mentor. This is not, I shouldn't be asking AI this because maybe this is too advanced or something.
So yes, I think there is, because these LLMs tend to be kind of an average of all the data they've seen. So they will recommend, they very often have very little taste, I found. Whereas a senior developer most likely has developed a certain taste and a way of coding and stronger opinions than the LLM has. So if you have a good mentor, I would, of course, it's much more fruitful, I think, to talk with them one-on-one and sit with the code. And also, the UI for discussing code with LLMs is far from as good as it is sitting side by side with a mentor on the same computer, using your hands, your voice, your eyes, everything, your body language. Like the bandwidth between humans and AI is much lower than the bandwidth between humans. So I think, yeah, both kind of the bandwidth and the lack of taste in these LLMs and lack of opinionated and less opinionated solutions, which you sometimes want, I think makes the case that mentors definitely still have huge value to contribute to juniors or code learners. And, sometimes it is much more relieving to talk with another human than an AI all day.
I really like that, actually, the bandwidth example, because that makes a lot of sense. Like if someone's in the room, you can kind of get their social cues. If you're just like, quote unquote, not getting it, it's like, no, man, like you're not getting it. Let's take a step back. Let's kind of look at something else. And AI wouldn't do that. And AI would be like, oh, you don't get it? Okay, well, here it is again.
Yeah.
You're right. Whereas the human would be like, okay, we got to take a step back. Let's go get a coffee. Let's like talk about like maybe the basic theory about this again. Then we'll like go back into your specific issue, try to solve it. That type of stuff you're not going to get that with an AI unless it's, maybe in 10 years or something, but it's not, You're not going to get that. Absolutely.
And the mentor will see like, now you are a little bit tired. You've banged your head against the wall too many times with this specific problem, trying to get to that and that solution. Let's do something else, like those kinds of advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you're getting frustrated. Let's back up. Let's go do this. You know what? Let's do this other thing. I think this will actually like give you insight into this other thing. And the AI doesn't know what you're thinking. It doesn't get it. Human to human bandwidth. I like that. Maybe that's the name of the episode.
That's what Scrimba's been all about since day one. It is kind of increasing the bandwidth for communicating around code. So you get that audio on top of the actual IDE with a cursor or a pointer that moves around and slides that can visualize things for you. Like this is something we've been thinking about for years. And lots of things to do there with AI as well in the future.
Well, in the context of Scrimba, like me personally, like I was learning, I think the last course I took was CSS variables. And one thing I liked was that, obviously the teacher's going through it. Like you said, you see the cursor, you see what they're doing on the screen, but like I'll come up with questions in my own head and I'll be like, hey, like, can I do it this way? So you like pause, go in, you can like mess with the code, like play with it and be like, nope, that's broken. Okay, why is that broken? Quick little Google search, and it's like that. Like I'm able to like stop the instructor. I don't have to wait for the whole class, like in like a college or something. I wait for the whole class to like, figure that out again. It's like, nope, stop, answer my question, explore that topic. Okay, cool. Press play again. Let's continue with the rest of the course. And like, I found that super, super valuable, 100%.
Yeah. So that is like that. I would say that's a part of the bandwidth between you and the teacher. The fact that you could like kind of try the teacher's code out and modify it a little bit quickly and then get back to the narration.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that idea because I know that like some tech experts even say like, just, not even in the coding context, but they're like, the bandwidth between like people talking in like during COVID, for example, like people just texting, people are like, oh, we're fine. Even if we're in lockdowns or whatever, we're fine. We can text, we can do this. And it's like very quickly video chats came back because you get a little closer to that bandwidth. It's not quite perfect. It's not quite an in-person conversation, but you get really, you're starting to get there. And it's like technology is almost always chasing that bandwidth in a way.
Yep, exactly.
And I want to ask a question here too, because like, we're talking about AI a lot. And when you're talking about AI, there's going to be people listening to this that are like eye rolls the whole time. They don't like AI, right? And AI is just, it's because it's been caught up in just like a bunch of different controversies, like things like copyright, art creation, which is like tied to copyright as well. A bunch of other little things as well. Like we've talked about some of the coding kind of issues that it's come up with. But in the context of, learning to code, I've personally, heard concerns about the quality of the code being generated for junior developers, kind of the things we've been talking about, things like the prompt tell, things like that. And what do you think about that? So like, is there concern that those that learn to code alongside AI will have an actual like measurable disadvantage because they've learned to rely on such a powerful tool right out of the gate? Right now, Scrimba, on the other hand, has seemingly embraced AI through a new feature called instant feedback. So would you be able to kind of like talk to me about that? Like, why would you go toward AI? Like, is that helping with that bandwidth thing? Can you tell me how instant feedback works? Things like that.
Yeah, so I do think like the only way to learn how to code is to write a lot of code. Like you can't just watch videos or read articles. You have to kind of get it into your muscle memory again and again and again and write just a ton of code. So that's always been our thing since day one. And I think if you're just prompting your way, never writing code on your own, I mean, I guess you'll become a prompter, but you won't become a coder or developer. So, but to kind of answer the question regarding what we do here on instant feedback, which is the AI-powered feature we launched quite recently. What this does is that when you are in the middle of a scrim and the teacher gives you a challenge, so a scrim, for those who don't know, that is kind of the Scrimba screencast, these interactive IDE experiences that look like a video, but are actually fully editable by the student themselves. So when you get a challenge in the middle of a scrim, which you do all the time by the teacher, you are to solve that challenge directly inside of the same player. And previously, you had to watch, once you'd kind of completed your solution, you'd have to watch the teacher and see how they do it. But now we've added this AI feedback feature, which basically gives you feedback instantly on your code, on whether or not it is correct, based upon a few like acceptance criteria. And if it's not correct, we don't give you the answer, but we kind of point you in the new direction or in the direction you need to go. So this is the exact opposite of what these AI copilots or AI agents do, where you prompt with text and they give you a bunch of code back. Here, you write the code and the AI gives you some text back. And you have to interpret that text and look back at the code you just wrote and like, so I'm messing up something here with this first variable the AI is telling me, but what is that? Okay, got it. I'm mixing up the operators or whatever. So this, I think, is just speeds up learning significantly. And that's essentially the feedback we've gotten. From testing this, from the beta period, people just loved it because you quickly get that boom. How well did I do? And not just like if we couldn't do this with the just regular test suite, as many other code learning platforms have, because there's not always a right or wrong answer. It's like you are to implement a design using CSS or solve some kind of problem, and you can do it in many different ways. And yeah, just in many cases, unit tests aren't sufficient. So yeah, we are trying to kind of just get you to write more code and give you more feedback on your code so that you are able to solve the challenge, and also make you go through our courses faster, because if you nail it quickly with the AI, you can just skip over the teacher explanation if you want, because then you already know the learning objective. So yeah, it's just about avoiding that trap of relying too much on AI and using AI to not write the code for you, but give you the feedback.
I really like that you don't have to watch the teacher solution. Like, I like watching the teacher solution sometimes because it's like, hey, I'm stuck. I'm going to watch it's kind of like checking the back of the book for answers, in a math book or something like that. And then you work your way back and you kind of reverse engineer it. But like you said, with something like, CSS, if the goal is like, hey, these two divs are overlapping, get them to align side by side and make sure they don't overlap at any screen size or something. I could do that with grid. I could do that with flexbox. I could do that just with box model and margins and things like that. And so if I'm really new and I don't know that, and I go and I see that the teacher uses just flexbox, I'm going to think that flexbox may be the only solution. And, with writing code, I'll eventually learn that there's other ways to do it. But I like that you get that instant feedback. Like, the teacher solution is there, but if the AI is like, yep, you're good, you used grid, that's totally fine, they're never going to overlap again, it's like, perfect. So now I know that, especially if I watch the teacher solution after, if I choose to get that extra content, it's like, okay, perfect, I know that. Or like you said, you can just skip the teacher solution if you're trying to quickly kind of go through the course and you're like, okay, like, I understand this section of CSS, and so I'm going to like move on to something else. So that's really interesting. That's almost like, again, like lowering that bandwidth a little bit, where it's like, we already have like the interactive, I call it the interactive media player code editor.
Yeah,
we already have that. We already have that. But then we have now like this AI insight, but then we also kind of have that back of the book, like teacher answer as well. So we're kind of getting more into like almost traditional class without the teacher having to be there.
Right. And it's interesting what you said about like not necessarily caring too much about the teacher solution, because we are exactly in the same camp, actually. And it took a lot of tweaking in terms of the underlying prompt to get the AI to understand that the teacher solution is a suggested solution. But if the student shows that they understand the underlying learning objective, but has solved it in a different way, that is still a valid pass. So that took some tweaking.
Well, that's I was about to actually ask you that. Like, how difficult was it to get an AI to like not be so rigid with the teacher solution?
So yeah, it took some tweaking, and some models struggle a lot with it still. And we still like constantly we get like reports. So we go in and update the prompt for the given challenges daily, actually. So when people kind of dispute the feedback they get. So, but yeah, oftentimes it's been like a matter of which model that understands the specific thing. For example, ChatGPT 4o Mini has just a really hard time of being able to judge whether or not someone has used template literals or regular strings correctly. So like, or whether they're actually using template literals. Just can't do it. It's a fascinating blind spot in that model. But yeah, well, I think with all these AI engineering products, people find, or I hear again and again, that it's just so much tweaking of the prompt, essentially.
It's good to hear that we're already at that stage. Like I mentioned that AI was sort of still being pioneered. Like it's still very much the cell phone era of like smartphones
Yeah.
have just come out. Do we want keyboards? Do we want full screens? Do we want squares? Do we want rectangles? Like where are we? It's being like, things are still being pioneered, but like you're saying, it's like we're already getting useful things out of these AIs, but we're also being able to tweak them. And even though there's blind spots, like you said, it's like that's something that OpenAI or whomever, if it's another model that has a different blind spot, it's like, hey, there's a blind spot here. They look, it's like, oh shoot, like we messed up the care set or something like that. We gotta change that or something like that. That's why there's a blind spot. It's like we're not only improving and pioneering, but we're already tweaking and getting like a really good like use case out of these things. So it's like, it's encouraging to hear, but it is also like an interesting feature. Like it sounds like it's just going to benefit the student at the end of the day as it gets stronger, like AI in general. I mean,
Exactly. And it's actually quite a lot of like many models struggle with these judging students and whether or not giving them feedback and judging it as a correct or wrong, incorrect solution. Still, like a lot of the like latest models as well has struggled with that. So we have a test suite, and no one has ever, I think, nailed it 100% test suite, which I think a human would. A good coding teacher would do that. But yeah, it's interesting to see. And I think you're totally right. The better they get, the better teachers they will also be for students.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it allows, it's almost like allowing the student to like explore, kind of like when I was saying how you pause and I kind of go down that rabbit hole of like, hey, is that going to break things? Yes, it did. Why is that? You go look. It's like, this is like another thing where they're like, can I do this with grid? Can I do this with this other solution? You do it. And if the AI is like, yep, you're good. It's like, oh shoot. Okay. Maybe grid's powerful. And that might lead them down the rabbit hole of like, let's learn more CSS grid, right? Like, it's a good solution. Let's go do that. And like, when you are learning, it's like, get like you said, code all the time and like absorb all that stuff. Like look it up and like at the very least have it on your radar. Like you don't want to just have like, was it box model? You want to just have margins and floats and things like that. Like Flexbox is pretty good. So is grid sometimes, like make sure you kind of expand your horizons. And that's obviously, I'm just talking in the context of CSS, but that applies to, everything really that you're learning.
Yeah. No, much more fun to do challenges when you can bring your unique skill set in and don't be reliant on that one specific right answer. So I totally agree.
Now I do want to like kind of change gears a little bit. So, there's a lot of opinions out there on what an aspiring developer should learn first. So this isn't, an AI question. This is just sort of like, this might be that tech snob question almost, but there's sometimes there's like, should developers learn front end? Should they learn back end? React, Svelte, some people just say, hey, just code. I know you said that, like code a whole bunch. And some people just say, just code. Doesn't matter what you do, just go. So what is your opinion on this matter? Like, do you think that all students should like start somewhere specific, like on the front end, for example? Or is this not a one size fits all scenario? Like, is there, I don't know, like a personality type or something where it's like, hey, you should be doing databases like day one. You should be on that back end doing that type of stuff right away.
I think I feel almost like I'm repeating myself here, but I think it goes back to what I said earlier about lean into your interest and avoid boredom at all costs. So, and also be very skeptical, I think, to people who give you advice to do things or to learn in a specific manner, especially if they haven't asked you questions first about your interests, about your strengths, or about your personality. Then you should really not take their advice in terms of how you should learn how to code. So because it's like, if you are the kind of person that wanna get things out there quick and dirty, you shouldn't worry too much about test-driven development or algorithms to begin with. You should do something completely different. And like, if someone forces you down that path, it's almost like saying to someone like, oh no, you should study sales and marketing because that's where the good paying jobs are. And you're like, no, but I'm an introvert that likes numbers and like working on my own and not with other people. Like, you have to ask people like, what are you curious about? What triggers your inner motivation? So yeah, that's essentially my take on that. I wouldn't give anyone front end or back end, React or Svelte, AI or not AI. Just do what floats your boat, essentially.
And that is good advice, because like Mike and I, it's kind of like a famous, maybe infamous thing where we are always like, hey everybody, like if you ask our opinion, you should be learning the 3 pillars. Like you should be learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then go to a framework. But we always, or at least now, we have like cracks in that where we'll say, but there are going to be times in which like, you may have a unique experience where you came from desktop development and like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are just too easy. Like you're just going to look at them and be like, I get it, or something like that. And it's like, you're coming from a unique perspective. Or if you're like, I need a React job, I need money, you're coming from a different perspective than someone that's like, I want to learn all about web development. It's like, no, you need money. There's a React job available. You're going for it. It's like, well, don't sit there and, play with HTML for 3 weeks. It's like, get on the React train if you can, get a course going, and then, do that. So like there's advice, but there's like kind of cracks and different pathways in there as well.
Yep. Totally agree. It's depend upon the background and the goal. And I mean, some people want to start with, could it be like probably were like they're into game development and they're like Unity. I don't even know what programming language you would work with in Unity, but C++ or something. I don't know. Or actually,
Likely that, I think. Like maybe
okay.
I'm definitely not a game dev.
No, me neither. But yeah, the point being, yeah, lean into your interests and pick whatever takes you down the path you are interested in going. And though, of course, you can't go that wrong with starting with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it's a very like safe. If you don't have strong opinions, I would agree that is a good place to start, and that is where we happen to start people on Scrimba as well.
Because you can absolutely, like I even said, like you can absolutely. Some people say the 3 pillars, there's no money in it, but that's not true. Like if you're a person that uses tools, like a lot of our clients use tools, you can expand those tools a lot with those 3, go in there, add different divs, have the tools, then populate the things in there. And that's like, I'm doing that, after this, I'm going to be going helping somebody expand like a slider in Elementor with a bit of JavaScript. Like that's totally something I'm getting paid for. I'm not doing that for free for them. So like there's totally money in that too, because I know that that's like a concern that a lot of people do have.
And there's money in no codes, like learning Zapier and all of these other make.com and tons of them, and stitching them together and throwing a little bit of code on top of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that like, we've been talking about, whether you should learn front end, back end, the different pathways, things like that. I read in like the Scrimba roadmap, so kind of a pathway for Scrimba, that there are some full stack courses coming, some back end stuff that where, they're going to be teaching Node, Next.js, and SQL, whereas in the past, you guys have focused, I think, exclusively, right, on front end, or mostly at least on front end stuff.
Because of our technology, or that we're running the code in the browser, we have the IDE right there in front of you. We've only been running it on the client. We haven't set up like an architecture where we kind of spin up a container for you so that we could run any type of programming language. So we've been reliant on just front end up until now. But now we are getting backend support. So we are getting we're using web containers under the hood. So people can run Node.js essentially in the browser as much as they want. They're using their computing power. But that means that you can build lots of more things in Scrimba, and also take courses on all of these cool, powerful topics, which has been our actually most requested feature request for a long time.
It's honestly something I think I'm going to take advantage of, because like me personally, like I said, I did a couple courses, but the one I remember the most is the CSS variables one, just because I needed to like enhance my knowledge. I didn't really use them in a lot of my CSS stuff. But then like Mike has always been hounding me like, hey, you should learn more tools, and like learn more like full stack stuff, things like that. And so like I am excited to hear this, because like I know that like, there's a lot of value in Udemy streams and things like that, of course, but it's like I do want to be able to stop and go and play with it. So like, just as like kind of like a logistical question, like does it work the same way? Like I know under the hood it's different, but can I pause and like break the code and things like that?
Yes, though that is a little bit more complex, because when we run backend projects, there is like a state involved. So with our front-end project, it's just like whenever you jump into the timeline, you can hit the refresh button, and the exact same code as the teacher ran at that point will run. But with a backend project, it's more like, so you did like npm install at the beginning of the scrim and installed a bunch of things, and then you started some kind of process or processes, like npm run dev or whatever CLI you're using to spin up the project or to build a project. So that means that when you jump in, and like we actually have to make sure that you kind of get the packages installed, and that you get you to the right state there and then that the teacher was in. So it's more complex. And if we also add databases, how do we make an exact copy of the database at that exact point in time so that you get that when you jump in? This is kind of maybe a bit hard to understand through audio and like for the listener, but just much more complex to keep track of the state. And we haven't really solved it, to be honest, but so it'll be perhaps a bit rough around the edges in the beginning. You have to, like, when you jump in, you maybe have to run some commands to get things spinned up in the way the teacher had it. But I think either way, it's going to be a completely new learning experience for learning full stack and backend, which no one else has in terms of this mix between the audio, visual, immersive, high bandwidth communication, and then the fully hands-on, running backend in your browser. So I'm super stoked about it, and hopefully now, in not too many weeks, we have it live.
And I do understand what you mean. Like, I never thought of all that. Like, it's almost like infrastructure stuff that you need kind of set up in the background for the back end tech. Cause like I used to be a sysadmin, so I used to be the person setting up the servers and stuff. And like, just, I mean, this is like a number of years ago now, but like just that side of things, I was in more or less IT sysadmin, and it's like just setting up playgrounds for people was like a whole process. Like, get a VM, do this and that, and like of course we've probably come further than we were back then. However, that does sound like a nightmare. It sounds like something that's like really challenging that I did not think of, because like, if it's just some, I don't know, some JavaScript that's storing in like local storage or something, it's like, well, once you refresh that could just go in and say like, yo, like clear out that local storage and put the teachers back in there.
Right. No, it is a headache.
Yeah, for sure. Now you've seen, we talked about courses, we talked about AI. There's going to be some people here for sure. I know that a lot of junior or aspiring developers listen to this show. And, as someone who, does run like a coding school, you've seen tons of developers break into the tech industry, get their first jobs, transition from other jobs type of thing. What are your, sort of top tips for aspiring devs to get their foot in the door?
Yes. So I have some tips, or some hacks, I guess you could call them, which I've actually written an article about this for MDN. So for those who want to learn more, you can head over to MDN and read that article. Or if you can, of course, join Scrimba, as we talk about many of these things in our courses and in our own podcasts and community events and whatnot. But there are a few hacks that I see work again and again that most developers don't do, but that can really put you apart as you're applying for jobs. And I won't do all of them here, but I can do like the top 3, which I've seen. And the first one of those is that you stand a much greater chance of getting your foot in the door if you use your non-technical background to your advantage. And by that, I mean, like, what have you worked with before? And where are the tangential coding jobs in that industry, or even perhaps in that company, or in that field? So, for example, we had Adrian in Costa Rica. He was a previous Scrimba student. He worked at a hotel. So he knew a lot about how to sell to tourists, how to market to tourists, just the tourist industry in general. Then he learned how to code and got a job eventually as an email developer for TripAdvisor, which is like a public US-based company, a billion-dollar company that really needs to sell to tourists. And he knew how to do that. He knew a lot about that. He knew a lot about the marketing tools they use, because he worked on much of the marketing in the hotel and stuff like that. So then he was able to get a job as a developer there, as an email developer, coding email templates, which is kind of a niche within development, but still very important. Emails are such a important revenue channel for I would say almost any business. So that's what he did. And I've seen tons of other examples of the same. Like, we've had nurses and doctors and health workers going into health tech, working as developers in startups or more established health tech companies. We have previous teachers who've started working in ed tech. We've had marketers who started working in advertising technology. And just like, think, what can you bring with you? Because all else equal, if you have experience in the industry you're applying for a job as a developer at, you will have a slight edge over the other applicants, because you have empathy for the customers, you know the problem, you know the lingo, maybe you even have some connections in the industry so that you can get a warm referral. You're just so much better off than if you're switching careers and you're going into a completely new industry and a completely new role as you're now a developer. So that's my first tip.
I just want to jump in there, because that's really interesting, because we make a lot of assumptions as developers. Like, if you go and you make someone like their CMS, just like, for example, you get like all the fields laid out. There's a lot of assumptions in there. Like, I assume they want their email. I assume they want like a rich text here. I assume they want a toggle switch to have this on or off. I assume they may not want the ads here. Maybe we'll need another toggle or a drop down to switch the status of this slider, whatever it is. And like, you're making a lot of assumptions. Whereas like someone like me, like I'm a very avid gamer. If I was working on a gaming website, it's like, I wouldn't really be assuming much. Like, I know what they need on the page. So I'm going to put the CMS together properly.
Great point. And I think we need a lot of developers who have that background. We can't have just our entire developer population be people fresh out of college who'd never had a career before. It's better for the world that a lot of doctors and nurses and lawyers and oil workers and bartenders become developers to bring that experience into the industry. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is something developers rarely do because most developers have been in such a privileged position throughout their careers, which is to really knock down doors when you apply for jobs. Don't just send the application and sit on your hands. Really go that extra mile. So classic advice for any part of life, actually. But for aspiring developers, I think it's extra important. And I've seen this many times. And I think the best example is someone we've interviewed in our podcast ourselves, Steffi from Spain. She got ignored by, she was like, learned how to code and applied for a job at a company she really wanted to work for. But she just got ignored like 3 times. But she didn't give up. She, in addition to like sending the application, she reached out to people who work there on LinkedIn. She interacted with the company on Instagram. She sent multiple emails. She asked previous colleagues about getting warm referrals. And she ended up not getting the job she applied for, but when announced another similar job a few weeks or months later, they kind of remembered her I think she had to still fight to get in the door, but she had left a good impression the first time around. So then she finally got the job at the second shot. And if you're a developer who've like been chased by recruiters all of your career, as many developers have, you're not going to do that. And quite a lot of developers are more introvert or leaning toward being more introvert. So they might not be comfortable doing that. So if you just play that to your advantage and go that extra mile, show up, call, connect via multiple websites, you'll stand a much greater chance of getting the job.
I actually do have a friend. He wasn't applying for a job, but he was doing the exact same thing as me. He was in IT, then he went into web development, and he was very introverted. And then he decided, I guess one day that he was just going to like start putting himself out there, and he started learning about more opportunities. And now he is all about like automation and things like that. He runs his own company. He has a bunch of different things going on as well. And he like attributes that to like becoming like kind of just like forcing yourself a little bit to sort of like put yourself out there. And like, not only can he see the opportunity, but other people will say like, you know what, like I don't have a developer job for you today, but like I do need a copywriter, and like it'd be super nice to have a developer on the copywriting team. Could you do that kind of thing? And like kind of getting yourself into getting that foot in the door, really.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to kind of the opening up, being flexible, accepting you won't get the perfect gig the very first time around. But if you are flexible, yeah, I can do that. Of course. And it's just a short, maybe not that well-paid gig as well. If you take it, opportunities will come.
Absolutely.
So the third tip, I would say, which is also very effective, is building dedicated projects for the company you are applying for a job at. And the best example here, or one example, I've seen several, is Andy. He was in the US, in Arkansas, I think. He kind of applied for a job at a local agency in the town where he was living. It wasn't like a big town, I think. I think it was like it wasn't like a metropole. So I don't think there were like huge amounts of jobs there or agencies around. So obviously he wanted to like make a good impression. So what he did, it was just so impressive. He went so above and beyond that he like actually research kind of the market they were, or what kind of ideal customer profile that agency had, like what kind of customers did they have in their portfolio. And he found like a local gym, which he thought would be a good potential customer for this agency. And this local gym happened to have a really bad website. So Andy rebuilt their entire website, made it much better, and showed up at the interview for this agency saying, hey, by the way, you guys should approach this gym down the street or on the other side of town or wherever, because they have a really crappy website and they need to fix it up. By the way, I've also coded it up myself. So you can see my coding skills, my design skills, and also it hints to my business skills or business sense as well, that I'm at all thinking about this. And lo and behold, of course, he got the job, because
Of course.
imagine as someone sitting on the other side, you've seen like interviewed five other people who are like, yeah, they were all pretty smart, nice people. And then boom, suddenly someone comes in and brings this to the table. And that's just like next level. So if you really, really want the job, consider building something dedicated for that specific company. Now, this, of course, requires that you have the privilege to be able to take time to do that, and that you aren't applying for 100 different jobs. This can only be done if you're applying for a limited number of jobs, but it is super effective. So that's my top three tips. If I was a junior developer today trying to break into the industry, that's probably the three things I would have done.
What I like about these tips too is, like, they're actionable, but they also kind of cut through the doom and gloom era that we're kind of in right now, where there's a lot of juniors that, or like either they're junior devs that are learning currently, or they're aspiring devs, like they haven't really started the learning journey too much, and they're just sort of like, like hiring's down right now. We're not seeing, the heights that were the heights of like hiring, the crazy hiring frenzy, I guess you could call it, during the pandemic. But it's sort of like, yeah, but like that's a peak brought on by like a freak thing that happened, right? Like we can't look at the market and be like, well, it's just going to continue at a plateau after it rocketed up Everest and then just kept like plateauing. It's like, no, like it's going to come back down, right? Like the pandemic kind of subsided, and then the jobs also kind of subsided as well. So like you can't just judge like markets like that on their peak. And so I like that these are sort of actionable tips. And I mean, like, to even comment on the third one, that we've absolutely had people contact me and they go, hey, I want to become a freelancer. And I actually used to get this quite a bit on Discord, not so much now, but during the pandemic, it's like, I want to work for, like, I want to be a freelancer. And I found like a website that's crappy, right? There's like the gym, and like, should I like just make it and see what's up? And my thing's like, you know what, like it is going to be a lot of work and this and that. So it's a maybe, right? Like if you have the luxury to do it and you don't mind them saying no, because some people will assume it's a yes. Like if you don't mind them saying no, that's a cool thing for the interview or for the call. They may not even pick up the phone. So like, be aware that if you make some really complex site, like they might not pick up. However, it is a really great, like, hey man, I already have your site ready. Like I can deploy it tomorrow. It's like, whoa, okay, let's do that. That piece of crap website, let's get it out of here.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that if you don't if you haven't even called them, it's probably not the right move to like spend tons of time building their website again, because that is a big investment. Though what you probably can do with a lot of these is like look at their websites and see, can you find like some bad accessibility, bad responsiveness, crappy UI? Can you just quickly download the code and the CSS and fix it up and show them, hey, look at this. Your website should be changed this and this and that way. Don't worry about it. On me this time. Or listen, like here it is. I just not expecting anything back from it. You're going to leave a great impression. I remember actually someone did this with Scrimba once, suggesting a better like a continue learning button on the course page. That's the only time we've actually tried externally, like, hey, can you please come on as a freelance designer for us? Because this was great. We want more of it. And that person didn't reply. So they didn't do it to get a job. But only time we've tried to hire a designer, Scrimba, actually.
Of course, yeah. Like, and like, I get that, right? Like, it's like they have their own, like, they're going to be doing their own thing, whatever. But it's like, it's always good to have like that one thing just to kind of go in. Like, we had like the one guy I remember that in Discord, he ended up like during COVID, like there was a clinic, I forget where it was, and very, very busy. Like, it was very, very busy. And he said like the appointment making is just like absolutely atrocious. Should I make this? And I was like, they're going to be super busy. Yeah, the appointment making is going to be atrocious, but the appointment making is going to be difficult for you too. It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of that. There's like government involved now because COVID, whatever, there needs to be certain things disclosed and stuff like that. And it's sort of like, you don't want to like necessarily like interrupt them and interrupt you in a way, right? Where it's like, you want to just have your foot in the door. So then he ended up just making the marketing pages. And then eventually they were like, yeah, we'll hire you. Now make our like appointment thing better. You don't want to have like the whole, because like they have their own thing going on. You have no idea. Like they may have just accepted some huge opportunity to like go into a franchise of clinics or something. Like no idea kind of thing. Yeah.
You could like,
because everyone's on their path.
Yeah, but I mean, I think for those kinds of things, I would probably experiment with like recording a quick 5-minute video on how this form or this appointment booking system can be improved. Just that would probably separate yourself from a lot of the other applicants they get.
That's a good call too. Yeah. Like something where they could quickly just pull it up on their phone and kind of look at it kind of thing. And no, absolutely. I agree. Cause I mean, just a cold email is a difficult sell because like, I mean, I'm sure you get a ton of cold emails. I get a ton. I keep getting signed up for newsletters there. It's just like, well, who are these people? Like,
yeah.
So you had to kind of cut through that.
Yeah. Do something that makes them give you a little bit of extra attention, whatever it is.
Absolutely. Speaking of attention, though, I want to thank you for being on the show, and I'd like you to Per. I'd love for you to kind of take the floor, share any links that you want people to check out, any thoughts, any social media profiles, personal, professional, coming up, whatever. The floor is yours. Please let me know.
All right. Thank you. So it's been great being here. My name is Per Borgen, and you can find me on X under Per Borgen, or just search for me on LinkedIn on Per Borgen. There I share a lot of like updates, advice, and stuff like that. Of course, Scrimba.com, our code learning platform, which has a little bit over 1.5 million users at this point, over 12,000 subscribers worldwide who use us to improve their coding skills within everything from like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, AI engineering, UI design, and also now coming full stack and backend courses and databases and everything, all the fun stuff. So please check out Scrimba, and hopefully you will learn something new. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And I will, of course, this is for the listener, but I will, of course, have all those links as well as a link to your MDN article as well on the show notes on htmlallthethings.com once this episode drops. And once again, thank you, Per, for being on the show. It's been a great chat, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Now, I hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as we did, but it is now time to end. And before we do so, remember, you can support episodes like this on Patreon. That's patreon.com/HTML, all the things. Check out the tiers and give that a go. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons: Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacey Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And we'd like to give a shout out to Michael Araka, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.